Welcome to the Don't Be That Guy webinar series. We're going through the last week before Christmas. Today, we're going to be talking about projects, and I'm very excited to be talking about projects because I absolutely suck at project management. Thankfully, at Bering McKinley, we have a bunch of people who are great at projects, but myself, I never quite got it. And I think that's partially due to my lack of attention to detail or not understanding all the bits and bytes of particles to it. But I wanted to talk about projects, so I thought I'd bring our good friend Lewis in from Mula to talk to us about projects. Ryan's going to be joining us in a minute. And for now, though, Lewis, you want to say hi to everybody and give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Josh. And just so you know, it's not just you that sucks at projects. It is everybody.
Okay.
And the industry doesn't matter. It's all industries. Projects are just always a pain for everybody. So my background, I actually do not come from the MSP space. So you guys can rag on me. I don't know what a firewall actually does or what a switch actually does. I do know what an access point does. But I came from manufacturing and running large scale projects there and fell into projects the same way that everybody ultimately does. Hey, this is your day-to-day job, but you seem to kind of be doing the project. Can you be the project manager?
Yes.
And then I came over to Mula a couple of years ago, and we're a vendor, call it out. But we focus just on projects. So we've been in the project management space for 10 years, focused on the MSP space for 3 years. So my job is to make sure that we are growing and updating and developing specific to MSPs. So I spend all my days primarily onboarding our MSP customers to the platform and then working with product and making sure that we're updating specific to MSPs. And then I do some things like this every once in a while to talk about projects.
Outstanding, outstanding. And Ryan, it looks like you've got a name change. You are now Lewis as well, so that's cool.
You used my link, so there's two of us. That's perfect.
Outstanding. Ryan, let me ask you. I was sharing with Lewis and the folks here attending today that I suck at projects. Lewis tried to make me feel better and say everyone sucks at projects, but in your MSP, did you guys found a secret sauce? Did you guys have a way of just nailing projects?
I'm actually going to say yes, we did. It took us probably 10 years to figure it out. And one of the things for those of the people who have been with us for the other webinars, you kind of have to have everything else dialed. And this is almost like your capstone course, okay? Because you're going to rely on everything else. You're going to rely on your technicians entering their time. You're going to rely on good ticket hygiene. You're going to rely on all of these things to make that project run well. We were 75% projects in our MSP.
Right, right. You had to get it right.
Well, I think that because we got it right, we were 75% project. If we didn't get it right, we would have been 25% or less.
There you go. Well, Ryan, one of the things that I really have learned from other MSPs over all these years is very few of them do kind of what I might call an after action report, where they're really, it doesn't even have to be technical. The tools are hopefully make it easier, but were we profitable? Why were we profitable? Were we not profitable? Why were we profitable? Very few even do that step. And I can imagine why not, but maybe that's something you guys formalized, or did you get away from having to do that?
We never got away from having to do it, okay? Because getting away from having to do that is like, I went to the dentist, I don't have any cavities, I can quit brushing my teeth now. No. The reason you don't have cavities is because you brush your teeth. The reason your projects are still good is because you do that after action report. And it doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be, we sent like a 10 question quick survey out to our clients. We polled our external clients and our internal clients, our technicians and our staff. Just how did we do? What went wrong? What can we do better? Don't make it a big thing, but keep it consistent.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's good. And just a quick bit of housekeeping. If you have questions throughout, go ahead and ask them. The chat should be working. The Q&A should be working. Ryan's going to monitor that for us and share his wisdom along the way. Here's my first question for you, Lewis. And I'm looking for these to be dispelled.
Okay.
I oftentimes say to clients or whoever will listen to me, if you do nothing else in a project, set a fucking end date. Tell yourself when you're gonna be done. Just, pick a start, but more importantly, pick an end date and work tirelessly to that end date. Is that table stakes? Is that just what? Tell me about that little nugget that I try to pass on to people.
Sure. Yeah, no, and it's a great nugget. So for me, coming from the manufacturing space, we were doing high-speed lines to make product, right? And they were for customers, and it was okay, we need to be done with the project by this date so that we can count on the volume and the product after that date, right? It was a clear, we've got a goal that we're working to. Coming into the MSP space, one of the biggest surprises to me was people were saying, oh, no, no, no. We try not to give due dates to our customers. We don't want them to have anything to hold against us or hold over our head. And to me, that's nuts.
Yeah.
As a customer, the first thing I'm going to ask is, what is it going to cost and when are you going to have it done?
Yep.
That's all I care about. You're the technical expert. I am hiring you because I can't do it myself. How much is it going to cost me and when are you going to have it done? And people, I mean, I haven't seen a big shift. I mean, we're seeing more people work towards that, but I would say I'm still seeing a lot of people fight against that, right? A lot of people not wanting to give dates out there, not wanting to say, hey, we're going to do this. But in so many MSP projects, cutovers, migrations, deployments, all those things, you have firm dates you have to get it done by, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it's a real mystery. And I think a lot of it comes from, you ask any IT guy, can you do this? Will this work? What about this? And the answer is always the same. It depends. Right. And I get it. A lot does depend, but it's like, do I really have to ask you the follow-up question? Well, what happened last time? What did you say last time somebody asked this question? What happened? What experience did you have? It's like pulling teeth sometimes. Because MSP, these guys get burned, clients hear what they want to hear, but I think that end date is so critical. Here's another one for you, Lewis. I'm reminded of a client I had in like 2010, and the guy was a goofball, and he didn't like me any more than I liked him. But a moment I had of real empathy for him was when he was very proud of the fact that we fixed via our firewall installs. We're talking, Sonic walls in 2009 or 10. And it was, we fix VM, we crank them out. We're awesome at it. We kick butt. And he got a new CFO, really a glorified bookkeeper. And didn't take that person long to point out to this client, you're getting your butt handed to you. You think it takes 4 hours. It's taking some astronomical amount of time. And you're losing money on every one of these installs. And the guy didn't cry, but it was as close as you can see somebody crying when that gets revealed to them. What the fixed fee project versus the pay for what you eat version, the non-fixed fee. I see the fixed fee kicking people in the chops more often than not. How do we get around that? How does that get solved?
Yeah, a lot of people, from what I see, go to it just because it's easier to sell, right? Hey, this is exactly how much it's going to cost. And, then in that scope, there's no additional details provided around that. Not saying like, hey, it's going to cost this much per hour and it's this many hours. It's just, hey, it's going to cost $10,000 and that's what it is. I think a lot of people go to it because it is easier to sell. And if you do get really good at a project, like Ryan was saying they did, it's probably, hey, I know I can sell it for this much more and I'm going to make this much more margin. Back to your earlier point, though, the biggest thing before moving to that fixed fee is doing those reviews at the end of each project to say, hey, were we actually profitable? We thought it would take us 4 hours, it took us 10, or it took us 2. Why did it take us that much more? And then when you make that switch to fixed fee, that's why you still have to do the reviews. I like Ryan's analogy of the dentist. You still go every 6 months, right, to make sure you don't have any more cavities, but you still have to do that review. And if you start to see that slip, then you have that red flag to say, hey, I think the next couple firewalls that we saw, we need to do some T&M, figure out what's going on, and then we can go back to that fixed fee model.
Right. Ryan, how about you guys? You ever guys get your butts handed to you on fixed fee and some things that you thought you were doing better at, maybe in that first 10 years before you got it?
Oh, for sure. The simplest one, the one that just kept jumping out at my mind is, how long does it take to install a workstation?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody wants to answer
Say it. You want to say it depends. Come on.
No. Everybody wants to say like, oh, it's 2.5 hours. Well, sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 8. I mean, we had an architect firm that had a list, a law firm also that had a list that was like 16 pages for their setup for a new workstation. Okay. And when the sales team is always like, oh yeah, 2.5 hours, and then we're into it 8 hours, like these are things that you need to make sure you know your client and what those clients' requirements are, because this is one of the reasons why one size doesn't fit all networks.
Right. And here's another question that I have for Lewis on that. Templates.
Mm-hmm.
I love templates in the ConnectWise PSA world for tickets, even for some projects. But as Ryan says, not one size fits all. Where do templates come into play with projects? Is it just for your most common projects? Is it for all projects? Like, how do templates work?
Every project should have at least one template applied to it. Now, PC deployments, you could argue. Well, no, PC deployment should, because you're gonna start the project and you're gonna end the project the same way every time. So I'll keep coming back to this project review. If you don't have a task or a ticket or whatever you call it at the end of that project, or a project closeout checklist, and that's part of it or whatnot, it's going to get skipped, right? People are like, hey, we've installed it, it's done, go ahead and close it out, bill it, and let's move on. So from what we see is, we tell people every project should have at least one template applied, whether it's that base template where you're starting with a scope review and a work plan, you're then going to a welcome email to a customer, then an internal kickoff, then an external kickoff. Again, depends on the size of the project, right? If it's a 2.5 hour workstation deployment, you're not going to do an external kickoff, right? It might just be an email, but you've got that structure so that hey, we're going to start every project the same way, we're going to end it the same way, and then you can start building towards those due dates. You can see how long things are actually taking you as well, too.
I gotcha. And would you say, would you be comfortable kind of suggesting that for, a $2 million MSP, might you find one just base template, or would you say, boy, they should probably really be, using 5 or 6 different templates? Is there a number of templates that kind of jumps out at you to say they're under templated or they're over templated?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you set me up for the "it depends" comment for sure,
course,
right? If it's 75% of their $2 million is projects, then they might have 10 templates. If it's 25%, they might have 5 or 6. At that size, I would say you probably have PC deployments. Some people don't run them as projects, some run them as one ticket as well, too. Again, depends on the number of workstations, but you'd have a base. You'd probably have some sort of network infrastructure template around network switches, firewalls. You'd probably have some migration, whether you use the same migration template for a bunch of different things. And then you've got an onboarding and offboarding as well, too. So I'd say probably at least 4, maybe 5.
Okay. So if you came across an MSP, mature, they're cranking along, and they said, we've got a template somewhere in here, we don't really use it, that would be an opportunity for you to really help them, improve their project, performance.
Yeah.
You would
Yeah.
be
And
looking at that pretty early on.
yeah, and it does. Yeah, it's one of the first things we ask, but also that doesn't matter on the tool. Every tool out there has some concept of templates.
Sure.
You got to use them, right? I mean, it's a process thing. If you're not using them, you're not, that's on you. So,
Josh, we have a question from the audience. Chris, is now a good time? Yes, Josh?
Yeah, go guess.
Okay, perfect. Chris says, any tips to help projects moving when stakeholders are busy and engagement is low on the customer side? Chris, this is a huge issue sometimes. I'll go last. Let's hear what everybody else has to say.
Lewis, what do you say?
yeah, I say, after a certain number of requests or whatever it is, whether it's 2, 3, 4, or you say it's 1 week or 2 weeks, whatever it is, you send the customer and say, hey, we're putting this project on hold until we hear back from you. And you leave it at that, right? Now, you then still need to set some sort of regular cadence to touch base and like, hey, just a heads up, this is still on hold, because if you don't, then that's just going to get lost in time and space. So that's typically what I see. What I do is, hey, we don't hear back from you, right? We're not gonna, and it happens for us too, right? People
Sure.
sign up and want to onboard, and then we meet once or twice, and then we don't hear from them. So you've got to, at some point, you can't keep doing it every week and asking and asking and asking. It's taking up too much time, and before you know it, you've blown your budget.
Yep.
Just asking for those updates. So it's not, at a certain point, you got to put it on hold, and you've got to put it in that bucket.
I think the component of, once they're disengaged or once they're, quote unquote busy, I think it's just like in sales, the horses are already at the barn, and trying to re-wrangle them and do it gracefully and do it, limiting your exposure to the client getting pissed off when they come back up for air, really is all about that prep work ahead of time to say, let's set these meetings now before we start the project. Let's set these milestones ahead of time to say, we should be here by this date, and by the way, we're happen to be meeting on this date to see where we're at. I think that can help avoid that moment, or minimize that moment happening. That to me just kind of makes good logical sense. What's your thought on it, Ryan?
I definitely think setting it up properly from the sales standpoint, from the project management standpoint, is imperative. It happens. I've had projects that have become nightmares because of this. And or there was something that was discovered. I'm thinking of a specific phone system install that we were doing that was for a pharmacy, and their security guy decided after the quote was signed that he had a security concern that was like so buried down in the details of things that like even the Cisco guys couldn't even understand what he was talking about, type of thing. And this is where you have to re-scope the project sometimes and just come back and say, okay, so we're now talking about a security audit and a phone system implementation versus just that one thing. And pain drives change, unfortunately. I wish it didn't. I wish it was different, but that is human nature. The more pain. So if you inject even the thought of, we're going to have to requote this, we're going to have to go back to finance, we're going to have to go back through all this, sometimes that can get them moving.
Right. Well, thank you for that question. I think Chris was our questioner's name. Thank you for that, Chris. Here's something that I get a little bit twisted up on, and that's dependencies. So, just, this isn't a pitch for Movilla in any way. In fact, I won't even sound very flattering when I talk about this particular thing. I'd heard the word dependencies. I think, dictionary wise, I understand what it means. We have a massive template in our project tool, which happens to be Movilla. And I got real excited about dependencies. We've got like 800 things on this project. So I'm like, yeah, we should do this before we do that. And we can't do that before this. And I just got lost. I got absolutely lost and spinning in my head of, is this a dependency? Is it not a dependency? Is it a successor? Lewis, is locking in those dependencies critical to awesome projects, or is that kind of an icing on the cake? Where does it land on that spectrum?
I'd say it's critical. So when we get new partners that come in, what we talk about and work through is on every single ticket or task, whatever you call it, you should have three things: dependencies, durations, and work estimates. Most people understand work estimates. Those are your budgeted hours, right? You think it's going to take you 1 hour for the kickoff call, then you can compare if it goes over or whatnot. Duration, people get a little bit stuck on, and if you're having a hard time with dependencies, duration is a good place to start. It's essentially the work window, right? So if you're going to do your scope review and you think it should only take you 2 hours, but you know there's going to be some back and forth with the sales team saying, hey, what is this security, question that's in there, like Ryan was calling out, you give yourself a period of time to get that done, whether it's 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, 5 day, but that is really what influences the overall timeline of the project and then ultimately gets you to those due dates. Right.
Mm.
So, and that's what we see a lot is people will come in and like, I've sold a 10, 20, 30 hour project and it takes me 3, 4 months to finish it. Why is it taking me so long to get this project pushed through and recognize the revenue and the margin and the cash flow and all that important stuff? So if you have a hard time with dependencies, start with those durations and give yourself those work windows. And then durations, I do call it critical, right? For any project management, if you look at all, there's tons of articles and blogs and things out there from PMI and PMP and all that good stuff about dependencies. But essentially, to look at it more simplistic is you can't install something until you configure it, right? And if you have that as two separate tasks, your configure is your predecessor for your install. Now, you can also look at this as more general buckets as well too. A lot of the PSA systems will look at it as, hey, we can't move on to this phase until this next phase is done. And that's definitely one way to do it as well too. We're going to get all of this stuff done around the same time. But what I've seen a lot in the MSP space, and not to ramble on, so you guys cut me
Go
off
ahead.
again, I don't do any real work. I just hypothesize about things. So
Fair enough.
um, what we see a lot is people will come in and they'll be like, yeah, well, I can't put that many tickets out there because my engineers will just grab them and start working them and they'll get done out of order, which is a good problem to have, right? Because your engineers and technicians are wanting to work. But it is a little bit of a mindset change to say, hey, I can't have you going out and doing this until we do a scan and review because we might find something else that needs to be done, and then you're ultimately going back. So dependencies help avoid some of those issues as well too, but it ultimately it's going to give you that critical path and that timeline and that due date on your project, so you know what's the order that things need to happen.
Okay. So that I think you kind of nailed it. Or one of the areas really nailed it for me is that fear that you've heard people say, if I put too many tickets out there, they're just going to grab them and do them out of order. That really makes sense, because what I'll see a lot of times in people's PSAs is they're working projects and all the time is going on to these 3 tickets, but there's 60 other tickets there. Doesn't matter. Does the granularity to the time entry to the proper task or ticket, is that as critical as just knowing, at the end we were under budget or over budget?
That's the biggest depends question
Okay.
easily that we get and that we work through, and it's the Goldilocks rule, right? Because if I gave the example of technicians just grabbing tickets and working them. I would say more often than not, though, engineers are like, hey, I just need one ticket in the project to put my time against, right? And we see that a lot where people will just have a service ticket as a project and it's on a different board and then they'll work it there. Um, but then you need that level of detail to be like, hey, when we do go over, where are we going over, right? Or
Mhm.
even overall, we're under budget, but hey, consistently, like we're way over on our project management time, which is what always happens, right? So it really does depend organization to organization, like what's the right number of tickets. And I don't recommend going in and detailing out every little thing and like, hey, technician, tomorrow you're going to do this ticket, then this ticket, then this ticket, and I want you to put time against those 3 different tickets. No, right? Give them one ticket with 3 tasks in there or 3 steps in their checklist to say, knock these out in one day. So you've got to manage what we call what's the burden of administration with the detail that you do need to be able to drill in on.
Right. Okay. All right, let's switch gears here a little bit. And this will be kind of not a rapid fire, but project managers, home grow them or buy a PMP project manager and hire them?
That's a tricky one. So my gut tells me home grow.
Okay.
Right? Because what I see a lot of is PMPs coming in from other industries and MSPs, and the MSP industry is very different, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that struggle, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And they try to, and it's got to be the balance of what works for the organization. But if you have somebody that is detail oriented, they understand your organization, your culture, and they understand your team and your customers, I would rather give that person the training they need to be successful as a project manager than go find somebody that's expensive and bring them in that ultimately, more often than not, might not work out.
Okay. Ryan, what do you think? Have you homegrown a project manager?
For sure. We definitely did do the homegrown method. And one of the things that I found successful was I didn't necessarily need somebody that came from the IT industry, but I need somebody that's good under pressure and that can multitask a lot. I found success hiring a former 911 operator. They're used to rapid fire, they're used to pressure, they're used to dealing with all the different departments and stuff. And there was a high level of care about each of the tickets, if you will, because they're used to somebody's life being on the line. So this is actually a step back from that. And so we ran, I would say, for 7 years with a project manager that was homegrown and it was a former 911 dispatcher.
Okay, good. I like that. That's the answer my gut would have told me as well. All right, here's another one. We're only $1.5 million in revenue. We do, 50 projects a year. I can't afford a project manager. How do you address that concern?
Quantity of employees at that 1.5 million, I think, plays into it as well too. And this is how I would say, from my experience, 80 to 90% of people become project managers. Nobody wakes up as a kid and they're like, I want to manage projects when I grow up, right? Nobody. Literally, maybe like 2 people.
Yes.
And it's ultimately what in the MSP space, it's dispatch managers, service delivery managers, a lot of owners, a lot of head of operations, and a lot of customer account managers, customer success folks end up becoming that project manager, which is totally fine. It's just make sure you take a look at their overall time and give them a chunk of their hourly each week to go towards projects, right? Because what always happens is projects are a distraction from the day to day, and at an MSP, the day to day is typically the managed services because that's that recurring revenue that drives value that everybody wants. That's also important. But as you then pile those projects, they're special cases. They're one and done on top of that, and they can become the stepchild quickly, right? If you don't give that individual who's managing them hours each week to do that, they're like, I hate these projects. They're taken away from this. I don't have enough time. I'm overstressed. I'm working too many hours. So just find that right person within the organization and make sure you allocate some hours towards projects.
Understood. Ryan, anything to add to that?
I was thinking that at 1.5 million was when we got serious about our project manager and really was able, that helped us grow past that $2 million mark, was having that dedicated resource. And then when the sales side knows that you have that dedicated resource, there's a little bit more willingness to sell those projects.
Got it. All right. Well, this is going to lead into the next question. And I remember the first time I heard this question, it was at a shitty Hampton Inn in
Hey,
Des Moines.
don't talk bad about Hampton Inns.
I love Hampton Inn, but this is a particularly shitty one outside of Des Moines, Iowa. And the question was, can I charge for, this is like 2004 or something like that. Can I charge for project management? And I think it's really easy to give a cavalier answer like, oh yeah, hell yeah, you should put 10 hours on there or put whatever number makes sense. I think that's the right answer, but maybe there's a more sophisticated answer than that.
No, the answer is yes. You should. You need to know your customers though, and how you're presenting scopes and what is going to work, right? You know, some customers, if you put like, hey, we're going to have 20 hours of engineering time and 2 hours of project management time, a lot of customers will come back and be like, well, I'm not going to pay for project management time. I don't need that. It's the same. It's the same thing in every industry. People don't understand why managing projects are important.
All right.
So you just need to understand how you can recover that cost, whether it's you charge directly for it or you include it in the fixed fee, or a lot of people will just include it into their overhead, right? So they just look at it there. But you do need to, if you're not charging for it, you need to track the cost of it because it does impact the overall margin on that project.
Absolutely. Ryan, how did you guys handle that?
For sure. So we handled it two different ways. Both ways were successful in their own way. One time, towards the end, we were just putting straight up project management fees on there, and I would line item it. It was easier from an accounting standpoint to like match those expenses. Also helped us with our after action reviews of the projects to see how did we do. The other time, if the client really balks at it, we just raise the senior technician rate to accompany a project manager in that loaded rate. But the answer is, when you get more comfortable with projects, you will, and actually kind of feel like you're doing a good job at them, you're going to see the value of it, and then you're going to be able to translate that value to your customers.
Got it. Now, oh, go ahead.
Just one other thing to add there too is, a lot of people will just say, hey, our scope is this many hours, and then we're going to add 20% for PM time, right? So, which is a great place to start if you aren't charging for it at all. So industry is somewhere between 15 to 20% of the overall engineering hours for project management time. But just, again, part of those reviews, keep an eye on that too, because you could have a project where it's only a couple hours of your engineering time, but you've got a third party or something that you're having to interact with a lot. So just keep an eye on that, right? Start with a percentage if you aren't now, and then just review that over time to see where it really comes in at.
Well, that was going to be my next question is there a magic rule of thumb? You just, kind of casually said 20% or 15%. I like that. But then of course it probably comes back to those after action reports. How much time did it actually take us to kind of get closer to that number? Okay. Now the question that's near and dear to my heart. Upon whose head does the responsibility for the profitability of that project lie?
Brian, you can go first.
Perfect. I would love to. The answer is yes.
Yes.
Because it's everybody. It starts at sales. If sales doesn't set it up right, you're screwed before you get going. Okay. If the project manager doesn't allocate the right resources, say it's a simple workstation install, but they're scheduling tier 4 technicians to do it, your profitability is shot. Okay. And so it requires everybody down the line doing their job within their parameters. And that's why I said at the very beginning of this, you have to have all those other things kind of dialed, not perfect. None of us are going to be perfect, right? But like at least paying attention to them, right? Understanding what they mean so that you can refine it for next time.
Okay. How do I know if my project manager is doing a good job or not? Like, what are some key things you would recommend we look at to measure their effectiveness?
my top three is external client satisfaction, internal client satisfaction, and profitability.
Okay.
Yep.
Lewis, anything you would add to that?
Yeah, the only other thing would be is just tracking timelines, right? Tracking against due dates, right? What's your on time and complete for a project overall? And again, that's tough too, right? Because if the project pushes out because of the customer, but starting to record, hey, are we hitting dates and timelines that we give to customers? And to Ryan's point, a lot of that will come back through that external customer feedback, right? If you're delayed and they're not communicating, your scores there are going to plummet. So those two do go hand in hand. But yeah, profitability for me is probably the top one.
Okay. So here's another one for y'all. If I overhear or just kind of listening to a conversation of a couple MSPs talking about projects, and one of them really emphasizes change orders, I automatically put that person on this pedestal of like, oh, you're a god. You actually do that. I've heard of it. I think to myself, like, oh, I'd be so scared. I would think I messed up in my scope. The client's going to freak out. That takes a lot of bravery to say there's going to be this change. Probably just my own head junk. But if I kind of put change orders as this like ideal shining star of, boy, I wish we could all do that. Am I making too big of a deal of that? Is that just table stakes? Ryan, you're nodding your head.
I would say you're making too big of a deal with that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's part of me that wants to say grow a pair, but there's others. Another part of me that's like, this. Okay, let's take the word change order. If change order is scary, let's take that out. Let's just call it customer communication. Okay, and just be like, hey, so yeah, your firewall that we have a flat rate of like 2.5 hours that we're super proud of, right? Going back to an earlier comment. Yeah, we didn't realize you had like 17 branch offices that all came through this one. And yeah, this is going to be a significantly different project than we initially thought. Okay, or it could be something as simple as yeah, so somebody cut the fiber optic line between your two buildings, and this is completely out of our scope, which brings us back to scope. Okay,
Right.
setting it up well from the beginning. Okay, we had a standard exclusion in all of our projects that was building cabling was number one. If there's a problem with building cabling, it's not our thing. That's out of scope. Okay, and we only had like 5 or 6 of them, but we added them every time we ran into something else. Okay,
Right.
there is no real great list of like, here's the things other than start with building cabling, right? And then kind of go from there. But if you have it clearly defined in the beginning, why is it such a big deal?
Well, and I think that's where my mind gets scared, is having to say those words. We didn't realize.
Oh,
And I feel like, gosh, boy, doesn't that put this pressure on me that I have to be quote unquote perfect to know every possible scenario? Isn't that what you're paying for? Like, I kind of exaggerate that in my head.
right. So let me give you a quick story about this when I learned this lesson. So there was a big construction company. They did roads, and it was the middle of road season, and we did an upgrade or something, and I think we forgot to back up the database before we did the upgrade. Okay, it's a no-no. We know this. Okay, we knew better. We forgot. Okay. And of course, this was the one upgrade that something went sideways on, and they're like, the company's like, well, just restore from backup. And we're like, oopsie. We have server backups, but we didn't have that individual database backup. Okay. And the CEO was pissed, and I was on the phone with a pissed off CEO. I had my technician here. And I'm like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get it right. Like, look, I'm not going to bill you for this. Like, I admit, like, this is our mess up on here. I employ human beings. I don't employ robots. Okay. And honestly, even if I did employ robots, they're still going to mess up too, because somebody had to program them. Okay. At the point in time, I had 10 years with this client in history. Like, that's a lot of history to be able to go back on and say, hey, you know, um, at the end, he really appreciated the openness, the transparency, and I think it actually strengthened our relationship at the end when we took care of it, because relationships are easy if there's no problems, but you don't also get to know the person. I would come at it from, we have such an opportunity for you to get to know us right now and get to find out who we really are.
Right.
Because this is how we're going to solve this for you. Spin it, man. Like, that's the
Yeah.
industry. Spin it.
All right.
It's not just the industry, that's just life, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and it is, some of your best relationships will come from the worst things you have to deal with, because you understand how that partner works under stress. And to me, it's, and this one's hard to coach, teach, or whatever, but it has to be a culture thing. Inherently, what's right? Like,
Yeah.
to your point, we
Yep.
screwed that up, right? That's on us. We accept that. And being open, honest, and be like, hey, it's going to take us an extra 10 hours and this many dollars, and we're not going to charge you for it. If it's the customer's fault, hey, you never told us that this was here, right? It was never, and you have those reviews and you have that good relationship internally. I think one of the biggest points for this whole change order conversation was what Ryan said earlier about hiring someone who can handle stress and pressure, right? Project managers, you're going to have to make not fun phone calls and emails and conversations. That it's probably the number one part of the job is, hey, we messed up. This is late. We're over budget, right? If things are going great, you're sending an email. Yep, we're on schedule. No problem. So it's making sure you have somebody that can handle that pressure and handle that stress, because it's going to happen.
Right on, right on. Well, let's continue on that theme a little bit. And another area I get confused about is, I say, in the sales environment, when we're considering this project, I don't owe you a scope of work. I owe you a statement of work. I owe you this is the problem. This is our solution. This is how long we think it's going to take. This is how long is what we generally think it's going to cost. Once you say yes, now I owe you a scope of work. That's my logic. I'm happy to be wrong, because I don't want to make a bunch of scopes of work, because I'm imagining them to be very, detailed and intense. What would you say to that, Ryan?
So we got around this a little bit. We kind of went for the middle of the road. We did put kind of a scope together, but I forget what exactly we called it, but it was in human speak. It was, a technician will replace Sally's workstation and blah, blah, blah. Okay. And install these programs. Okay. Because the scope tends to be more bullet pointed, and the technicians couldn't follow that real well. Okay. It helped us from a quoting standpoint. We did include the scope, but at the same time, most of our projects were fairly repetitive. Like we would be doing, whether it's the firewall installs, the phone system installs, a camera system, a server, stuff like that. And we would have a good enough scope, and then during the not the onboarding, but the initial project scoping, not scoping call,
Kickoff kind of area.
Thank you, the kickoff call. That's what I was looking for. During the kickoff call, we'll go into a little bit more details on that. And help. That's what's going to help the project manager take that scope and put it into the project template and start flushing out all the different tickets.
I gotcha. Lewis, what would you add to that?
I'm OCD, so personally,
Okay.
I
You can't help yourself to.
I can't help myself. Yeah, I mean, but I mean, Ryan makes a great point, right? How does your team, how do your internal stakeholders need to digest that? How does your external stakeholders need to digest that? And again, find that middle ground, find what works for you. But for me, I like to have it all lined out, because ultimately the building blocks should roll up to what the total is, and you should have a clear, that helps you to really define that scope. So when that change order word comes up, it's like, hey, here we go. Here's what we approved. This is not part of that. So
understood. All right. Lewis, for you in particular, what are the KPIs or the targets to shoot for? What are your top 1 or 2 or 3 for any project? What are the key things to measure?
Margin.
Okay.
Margin.
That's the biggie right there.
Margin. I mean, margin. Yeah. Customer satisfaction for sure. On time delivery, but margin's at the top. Right. And then probably margin and the customer satisfaction. You could argue either way because without customers, you can't have projects, and customers are your most valuable asset. But if you keep losing money on projects, you can't keep doing them. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Ryan, looks like something caught your attention.
So Jody just asked us a question. During the proposal for sales process, what would happen if we proactively told the client, for every project, we'll provide you a statement of work occasionally? We discover changes or need new needs during the course of the project. Would you be comfortable with us coming back to you with a change order if that occurs? So I think Jody's trying to get ahead of what you said a while ago, Josh. Like,
Sounds like a salesperson, by the way. Go ahead.
it does kind of sound like a salesperson, yes. So what are your thoughts? It sounds like this is for you, Josh, actually. Would you be comfortable with us coming back to you with a change order if that occurs?
Yeah, I think that if we're thinking about how I could phrase that to a client, yeah, that seems comfortable. I think the point is say something up front that changes may occur is my takeaway from that, which is not my nature. I like to just say yes to everything and then keep my fingers crossed that everything goes perfect.
No, I think that as you're a growing MSP to that point, like I always had the philosophy, say yes, figure it out later. But when I say yes, we're not giving you a quote on saying yes. We're saying, yes, we're going to be able to do this. And then it's about resource allocation, right? Like what partners do I need to bring in? Okay. Do I need to be like, hey, Lewis, I just said yes to this crazy thing. Can you help me do this? And he's going to be like, for this much, we can't. Okay. Now I can start my scope.
Right.
And fixed fee time material comes into that as well too, right? Like
Yeah.
if it's something like, hey, we've never even looked at anything like this, like this is going to be a T&M, I'll give you an estimate, but this is the best we can give you at this point.
Right on. All right, gang, I'm gonna start winding us down here just a little bit. Ryan, in the chat that I think you and I and Lewis have, I put a Google Drive link in there. Can you test that to see if it goes to the document that Lewis shared for us? So I want to get that out to everybody before we leave.
Talk amongst yourselves. I'll do that.
Thanks, Ryan. All right. And Ryan, I'm sorry, Lewis, as we think about, because I know you're working with a lot of MSPs, are you seeing, or I guess maybe at what size do you start seeing MSPs have, dedicated project technicians? Because I know I see a lot of smaller MSPs try to get there too early. Yeah. But what have you made any observations around this?
Yeah. Again, you just really setting me up for the depends question.
Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah.
Because again, balance of revenue changes all that. But I'd say just as a rule of thumb, probably when people start getting between like 8 and 10 employees, I would say, I'm seeing like, hey, okay, this person, 75% of their time is going to be projects. And now we're going to give our service delivery manager 25% of their time towards projects. And then to Ryan's earlier point, once you start to see that clip along, it's like, okay, I've got enough business out there. I've got a backlog. I have a pipeline, whatever you call it, like 100% get it going. And then at that point, it becomes a lot easier to say, all right, I know that this individual can handle 30 hours of project work per week. I've got a backlog of, 200 hours. I need another, right? And then, but you've got to keep feeding that pipeline. So you've got to make sure that, again, internally you're communicating sales, like keep pumping it out. And again, just going to keep piggybacking off Ryan. If sales sees that, they're just going to have the confidence to go out and sell more of it too. So,
right on. Excellent answer.
So Josh, I want to add into this real quick. We were up over a $2 million MSP, and I did not separate out the technicians.
Okay.
Either the dispatch or projects could pull from the same technician pool based on skill sets. What the only way this works is if your dispatcher and project person like each other.
Yes.
Okay. We had instances, it will work, but there's conditions that have to be met. We had times where the project manager and dispatcher would just like, it was a personality conflict. And at the end of the day, one of them just either I needed to do exactly this, separate out the technicians, or one of them had to go because of this.
Right. Yeah, that's the really, you know, that's really where my mind goes is if you've got a project manager or coordinator and a dispatcher battling for resources, the emotional intelligence, the, you know, thoughtfulness of load balancing. Yeah, it's a pretty big ask to get all of that aligned.
Well, and we would have a morning meeting every day. It was me as owner, projects, and dispatch. 15 to 30 minutes. Okay. It wasn't super long. It was going over the day, going over tomorrow, going over the week for projects. Okay. Just like this is what we've got coming, this is where we're at. Any problems, anything. That takes discipline.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time. Ryan, did that link work by chance?
So I couldn't even find the link. We're gonna have to look at that afterwards.
All right, well, hang tight with me, everyone who's on. I'm just gonna grip it and rip it here, and I'm gonna put it in the, where would if I put it in the chat, it just goes to us. If I put it in the Q&A, I can't. And
You can put it
I
in the
think you're
chat
gonna
for
have to do
everybody.
that email, send it out to everybody like we've done previously.
yeah, I think you're right. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'll send out if you're you know, with us here today and we have your email address, you'll get an email here shortly with a really cool handout of 10 ways to suck less at your projects. So Louis, thanks for making the time to join us here today. This is really fun. I probably still suck at projects, but I have more speaking points to help others with it. Ryan, as always, pleasure. Thank you very much. And
thank you, Louis, and thank you for everybody attending.
Right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.